Welcome to the Essence of Liberty podcast. This is the horsemanship podcast where we discuss all things liberty to help you understand, connect, communicate, and play with your horse in a gentle, subtle, and force-free way. We'll get a bit nerdy about equine psychology and learning theory to understand the science behind it all. And we'll also dive into how to motivate your horse, ways to strengthen your relationship, solving those common problems, and how to use liberty as a way to build your horse up physically, mentally, and emotionally, all in half an hour or less. I'm Dr. Nadine Lindblom, former equine veterinarian, and I'd like to invite you to join me on this journey as a student of the horse. The way that you begin your liberty session with your horse is one of the most important parts of the session because it really sets the scene for your interaction together, and it also gives you a little bit of an idea of how you are going to structure your session and what you're going to do in your session. So the way that I begin the session with any horse, whether they're new to liberty or whether it's one of my more experienced horses that do it all the time, is that I let them go in the space. This is if I've brought them up to the arena or I've taken them to a space where I'm going to work them rather than if I'm working with them in the field. But I let them go and I just observe them for a little bit. This is so important. And if you are working with your horse in the field, you can still do the same sort of thing. You just observe them in the field. But when you're bringing them up into a new space, you're going to get so much information about how they're feeling mentally, physically, and emotionally. And I mean, liberty, this is all about your horse having a say, having a voice in the session, and for it to be a really positive experience for him and for you guys to have a back and forth conversation. It shouldn't be a situation where you bring him into the space and then you just start telling him what to do and sort of bossing him around. That's not what this is about. This is about a two-way communication, and it should be fun and it should be interesting, it should be engaging, and you should be sort of following your horse. So even though you are the one that's setting up the exercises, you're the one giving cues, you're the one guiding your horse through different movements and exercises, you still want to base what you're asking your horse to do in terms of what he is receptive to and what he is willing and able to say yes to. So every time you can ask your horse to do something and he is able to succeed and he's able to actually do that thing and he's able to unlock his reward, then you are boosting his motivation a little bit and you are creating a positive experience in the training space. Every time that you ask him to do something that he's not willing or able to do physically, mentally, or emotionally, then you're kind of creating this situation where you either have to kind of let go of that question and kind of go, okay, that's fine, we'll do something else, or it gets awkward, it's just not a very nice moment in the interaction because you either have to kind of ask your horse to try again or to try harder or to continue seeking. And sometimes if they have to say no or if they don't get it, then they can get a bit frustrated or they can just say no completely. And that kind of decreases their motivation a little bit. Now, I don't want you to be afraid of asking your horse to do things just in case he says no. It's going to happen and that's absolutely okay. But the more that you can try to ask yes questions, the more positive your entire interaction and your whole session is going to be. So this moment here, when you're beginning the session, you are able to get so much information from your horse as to how you can make this session the most enjoyable and the best experience for the both of you. So when you let him go in the arena, or if you get to the field, you're going to watch him and you're going to say, okay, where is your mind at? What do you where is your mind at? Where is your focus? How are you feeling? And what do you want to do? So when you let him go, he's either going to stand there and look at you, and sometimes you actually have to leave the space. Sometimes I step out of the fence to encourage him to do his own thing for a little bit. And it's great that he wants to stand there and, he's looking at you and he's like, what are we doing? That's fantastic. But if you, walk out you don't have to walk away completely, but just give him a little bit of space or stand outside the fence, then sometimes that's enough encouragement for them to just focus on their own thing for a little bit. And that's where you're going to get the information. Some horses, when you take the halter off, they are going to walk away calmly and start exploring their environment. That's a very, very nice thing to see because it's evidence that they are awake and they are engaging with their environment. They're curious, they're confident, and ideally they are nice and calm as well. And they're just, there might be stuff in the arena and they're looking at maybe some poles on the ground or some jump wings. It's just nice to see that they are curious and engaging with their environment. Other horses are a little bit anxious about being taken out of the paddock. So those horses are generally going to draw towards a particular end of the arena. Usually the end that is closest to the other horses or the other fields or the barn, wherever the other horses are. And that is extremely good information because those horses generally think that the opposite end of the arena is spooky. And it's a bit scary to be down that end because it's further from the other horses. In that sense, that's very good information to have because it means that after you do the initiation of contact exercise, and that's the first exercise that I like to begin with, especially if it's your very first time doing Liberty with this particular horse, I like to start with the initiation of contact exercise. And that's a little difficult for me to explain over audio like this, but in the masterclass, I show you. So if you're interested in that, then head over to the masterclass. But when you do that exercise, when your horse walks up to you and is seeking that engagement, what you don't want to do with a horse like that is then start walking towards the spooky end of the arena, because that's going to set him up to say no, or to say, oh, that's a bit uncomfortable, and then he's going to disconnect and walk back over to the more comfortable end of the arena. So as you're observing your horse here in the beginning of the session, if you notice that, okay, he has spent most of his time in this area of the arena and he hasn't wandered up to this end of the arena, then take that into account for when you do start working with him. And if you are a little bit further along in your Liberty, then you're still going to take that into account, because when you then start engaging with him, you may do a little bit of exercises in the comfortable space until he gains enough confidence to then wander up towards the more scary end of the arena. And you're going to be aware that it's scary and you're not going to push him too far over his threshold. But that is something that I see with most horses, especially at clinics where it's a new environment. So most horses are then drawn to a particular end of the arena. So the entire clinic basically happens towards that end of the arena. And then if we have more confident horses, then we can wander up and explore more of the space. But if it's a clinic that is with horses that are just beginning this concept, then yeah, most of the clinic is going to happen in the area of the arena that feels most safe to them. So that's one of the big things with observing your horse, is where they want to be in this space. Some horses that are really shut down, they will just go and stand and not interact with their environment at all. They might go and stand in the corner that's closest to the other horses, and they'll just shut down and not interact at all. So the ideal is when the horse is confident and curious and exploring the space if it's a new space. If your horse has been in that space a million times, he may not feel the need to explore, but if it's a new space, you'd ideally want to see a little bit of curiosity. Then the next thing while you're observing your horse is, okay, where's your energy level at? Some horses, when you take off the halter, they want to go for a little run around. They're feeling playful. They're feeling energetic. They want to trot around. They want to check things out. They are quite high energy. So that is fantastic information for you to have, because if you're about to start your session with your horse and he's high energy and he's playful, you're not going to ask him to lie down or do something that requires him to be in a really relaxed state. You are going to match that and say, oh my gosh, you're playful, you're energetic. Let's use this energy and create something out of it. Whereas if you take the halter off and your horse is like snoozy doozy and he just wants to sunbake and not move around very much and he's like really low energy, then perhaps it is a good time to work on the lie down or work on relaxation exercises or something that's super, super easy. Because if he's in that state, you're not going to be like, okay, do a canter transition, because he's not going to be receptive to that idea. So you want to meet your horse where they are. And the thing with if they're low energy is that if you meet them there and you start some easy exercises, they'll get a bit more motivated because they're succeeding with that and they're unlocking their rewards and they're getting a little bit of that dopamine as well. So they get more and more motivated, and suddenly you have access to the higher energy stuff. And while you're observing your horse as well, while they're moving around, you can have a little bit of a look at them physically. Is there anything that's catching your eye as to how they're moving? Are they still comfortable? Is there any lameness or anything like that? Because sometimes when we're too keen to get going and we start straight away, we can miss little subtleties in our horses and how they're feeling physically. So this is a really good time to just observe his movement. And if you're not, if you feel like you are not that good at spotting lamenesses, that's okay. Just look at your horse, because the more you look at your horse and you look at the way he's moving, the more or the easier you're going to pick up when there's something different. And if there's something different, it's probably something to consider, that, why is it different? If there's something, if he's moving his head differently, if if his gait just doesn't look as floaty as it usually does, then that's something to potentially investigate, or something that if you just practice looking at your horse, you're going to be better at spotting when it's abnormal. So don't doubt yourself too much. It does take a little bit of training to spot lamenesses and what leg it is, but if you get used to what is normal, then you will pick up on what is abnormal. So that's how I begin the session with every horse. But there is one more really important thing to do in this moment. So you're observing your horse, but you also need to observe yourself. You are bringing a lot of stuff into the session with your horse. As humans, we have a lot of stuff going on that is outside of the training space. We have work, we have family stuff, relationship stuff. There's everything that's going on in our head, and we can be emotionally affected by stuff that's got nothing to do with your horse. So before you let your horse influence how you are feeling, check in with yourself, and perhaps do this even before you go and get your horse. When you get out of the car or when you get out of the house, anything, before you let your horse influence how you're feeling, just check in with how you are feeling in your body, particularly emotionally. Are you bringing any frustration or irritation already into the session? Because that means you're going to be a little bit more sensitive if things don't go quite to plan. So you also want to structure your session in accordance to how you are feeling. If you are feeling a little bit irritated or frustrated for unrelated reasons, then just take a moment and try to let go of the expectations that you have of your horse. I know it's easier to say than to do, but really try to go in with no expectations and try to be there for your horse and how you can make this a positive experience for your horse. Sometimes it's easy to try to make it about ourselves, especially if we are not in a very good mental or emotional state. But if you can, just remember to check in with yourself. I mean, we spend so much time in our heads, and our heads are everywhere, and we're always thinking about tomorrow and worrying about what happened yesterday, and we're just always in our heads and not very much in our bodies. So really take a moment and connect to your body. Take a few deep breaths and ground yourself, because that is so powerful when it comes to working with your horse, connecting with your horse, and communicating with your horse. They are so sensitive and in tune to our grounding and how present we are. The more present you can be and the more you can be in the moment and try to forget all that other stuff, which I know is really difficult, but trying to just give yourself permission to not think about all of that other stuff for the moment. Try to give yourself that permission so that you can focus solely on your horse, because I promise you the session will go 100 times better if you are present and grounded and in the moment. But that's all that I have for you in today's episode. I hope that really helps you in beginning your sessions and what to look for when you're observing your horse, and how that can help you structure the session that you're about to have. And also to remember that moment where you you're observing your horse, but you also need to observe yourself and see what you're bringing into this session, and taking that moment to try to stay present and ground yourself before you begin your interactions together. I really hope that helps. And if you would like to dive deeper into Liberty, don't forget that there's the free masterclass available on my website. And if you would like to dive really deep, then there is, of course, the Essence of Liberty online academy with over 30 hours of videos and theory content and following 3 different horses in their journey to liberty. So I really hope to see you there, but if not, I will see you here in the next episode. But until then, don't forget to stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep exploring the beautiful possibilities of liberty with your horse. I'll see you in the next one.